Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into something, well, pretty unusual in the celebrity world. It's like a ghost press.
Right. You've got Emma Watson, huge star, suddenly doing these big interviews.
Yeah, major outlets. But here's the kicker. She hasn't got anything specific to promote. No movie, no TV show.
Not after being basically off the grid, professionally speaking, for about half a decade. I mean, her last really big project was Little Women, right?
That's the one. Wrapped filming late 2018, came out in 2019. So yeah, 5 years is a long time to be away.
It really is. And now she's popping up on podcasts like Jay Shetty's and magazines like Hollywood Authentic.
But instead of selling a film, she's talking philosophy, her state of being almost.
Exactly. And that's what we want to unpack today. This isn't just a where is she now? Okay.
No, not at all. We're using her recent comment from these interviews as a lens to look at some bigger stuff.
Things like the pressure cooker of modern fame, that constant demand for productivity.
And the clash between just wanting to create art and the whole machinery of selling.
Plus, and this is really interesting, how she's talking about political disagreements, specifically with J.K. Rowling, in a way that's, well, let's say surprising for today's.
Definitely surprised. So our mission here is to explore this shift. Her hiatus wasn't just a holiday. It seems like it was formative.
It really set the stage for this whole new public approach she's taking.
Okay, so let's start there with the break itself. 5 years is significant.
It's huge, especially for someone who grew up in the spotlight like she did. 5 years in Hollywood can feel like forever. Careers rise and fall in that time.
Totally. The industry expects you to stay visible, stay relevant, constant out.
Which makes her recent comments about re-entering, or maybe not re-entering the usual way, so fascinating.
Right, like that interview she did with Hassan Akkad for Hollywood Authentic. He asked her the totally normal question, so what are you working on?
And her answer was,
well,
it wasn't the standard answer, was it?
Not even close. She basically said, I just showed up. Like, no plan, no project pitch.
And then she described working on something I've never done before, but kept it super abstract.
Yeah, really abstract. She used this metaphor, didn't she? Feeling like someone in the dark, stumbling around, looking for the edges of something, trying to find a light switch.
Which, okay, sounds poetic, but the source material had a pretty blunt description for it.
Yeah. They called it vague booking and going super, super extraterrestrial touchy-fey.
Which sounds kind of dismissive, maybe, but it gets at something. It's like she was deliberately avoiding anything concrete. No timelines, no deliverables.
Exactly. And she apparently told the interviewer that that's why she'd avoided interview, because she's not on this linear timeline anymore. She's only moving forward if it feels stars align.
Which you can imagine is the opposite of what the industry machine wants. It wants predictability, a product, a schedule.
And this vagueness ties directly into the bigger philosophical point she seems to be making, right? This struggle between just existing and having to constantly produce.
Yes, she said it explicitly. She wants to speak more to a way that I'm being in the world as opposed to what I'm producing.
That feels like a direct challenge to the whole celebrity system. That system runs on output, on things you can sell.
And she sees the trap. The sources mention her saying that as soon as you tell people what you're doing, the very next question is always,
well, what next?
Yeah.
Always looking ahead, never just letting something be.
It creates this constant pressure, this narrative you have to keep feeding.
And she connects it to something deeper, this feeling that I don't have a right to exist if I'm not being productive in a very...
Wow, that's intense. Linking your right to exist to a certain kind of output. Like specifically movie output, maybe?
It sounds like it. Not just contributing, but contributing in this very specific, very public, very marketable way.
And her way of dealing with that pressure, her kind of counterintuitive solutions.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The whole, oddly, somehow, the less I try to do, the more I get done thing.
Exactly. And she makes this distinction between effort and trying on one hand, and caring and being present on the other.
Okay, let's not just brush that off as, celebrity. There's something there, isn't there?
I think so. Effort and trying, in this context, sounds like forcing things, pushing, maybe operating out of that anxiety she feels.
The anxiety of what's next. Yeah, makes sense.
Whereas caring and being present feels more like engagement without attachment. Just doing the thing for its own sake.
Kind of like mindfulness principles, maybe. When you stop fixating on the result, you can actually focus better on the process.
Precisely. Hollywood demands constant focus on the future result, the opening weekend, the next project. But if you let go of that, maybe the work itself becomes more authentic, more fulfilling.
And paradoxically, maybe even better. Because they're not forcing it.
That seems to be what she's exploring, trying to live in that present moment, even when the public, the industry, demands a future plan.
And we know this isn't entirely new ground for her, this attempt to define herself outside the usual boxes. Remember the whole self-partnered comment?
Oh, yeah. That was a few years ago. Another attempt to frame her own narrative, her personal life, on her own terms.
What happened? The media machine just took it and ran with it, didn't they?
Completely. She said herself the immediate questions were, okay, so when are the kids coming? When's the wedding?
So even a statement about her current identity just became a prompt for the next expected step. The machine always wants to know what next.
Which makes this 5-year hiatus seem even more significant. It's like her most drastic attempt yet to just stop the clock, to step off that relentless timeline.
To reclaim her being from the demands of producing.
And interestingly, that desire for present, maybe for a kind of non-attachment to outcome, seems to connect to how she's handling political stuff too.
You mean her comments about J.K. Rowling?
Exactly. On the Jay Shetty podcast. Given how incredibly polarized the conversation around Rowling is, what Watson said was quite something.
It really stood out, especially coming from a major Hollywood figure with direct ties to the Harry Potter universe.
Her whole stance felt like a plea for, nuance, civility, something that feels pretty rare right.
She said she doesn't let political differences cloud her fond memories of working with Rowling, that she's separating the person, or at least her past relationship with the person, from the current political fires.
Yeah, and the key quote, the one that really got attention was, I hope people who don't agree with my opinion will love me, and I hope I can keep loving people who I don't necessarily share the same opinion.
On the surface, that sounds reasonable, like just basic human decency, maybe?
You'd think so.
Yeah.
But today, in this environment, that's actually a pretty radical statement. Well, the source material points out that 5 years ago, nobody would have batted an eye. But now, especially in certain online spaces and maybe even parts of Hollywood, the expectation is often total alignment.
Meaning, if you disagree with someone on a key issue, particularly one framed as social justice,
then you're expected to publicly distance yourself. The idea is that not condemning is seen as implicitly condoning.
Right, and the reaction online seemed to prove that point. The sources quote that immediate Twitter.
Oh yeah, the neutrality in the face of oppression isn't compassion. It's siding with the oppressor.
Which perfectly captures that opposing viewpoint. It frames Watson's attempt at nuance not as mature, but as...
And that's the clash, isn't it? You have Watson seemingly operating from a place that values personal history, empathy, complexity, trying to hold on to the good memories in the relationship despite the disagreement.
While the critics are coming from a place where the disagreement itself is seen as fundamentally about harm, about justice, making neutrality or even civility impossible or unethical.
It's two different moral frameworks colliding. Watson seems to be trying to decouple disagreement from total rejection.
The source analysis uses some strong words here, suggesting her statement shows more maturity than your average Twitter left. Now, putting aside.
Yeah, let's focus on the dynamic. It highlights just how hard it is to occupy any middle ground now. She took a position that she knew would be unpopular in certain circles.
Which suggests she felt strongly about it. Maybe risking her standing to say, look, this relationship, this history, it's complicated, and I'm not just going to erase it because of the current politics.
It definitely took guts in this climate. And it makes you wonder, can public figures even afford to champion nuance anymore?
When things get framed as zero-sum, any attempt to find common ground or maintain a past connection can look like betrayal to one side or the other.
And Watson essentially said, I'm choosing the complexity.
The fact she even went there, knowing the backlash, said something. Maybe it connects back to her broader search for authenticity during this hiatus, choosing personal integrity over conforming to ideological expectations.
It does feel connected to that theme of being true to her own experience rather than just performing what's expected.
And that theme brings us right back to her critique of the job itself, the job she stepped away from for 5 years.
Yeah, her issues with the public demands seem deeply rooted in how the entertainment industry actually works.
She really put her finger on something many artists probably feel, but someone at her level rarely says so.
That the promotion part is overwhelming.
More than overwhelming. She said the promotion, the selling of the art, ends up being the bigger component than the actual job itself.
That the tail wags the dog, basically.
Exactly. And that imbalance led to probably her most powerful quote from these interviews.
The soul-destroying one.
That's the one. I do not miss selling things. I found that to be quite soul-destroying.
Wow. Soul-destroying, that's not just saying it's tiring or it's annoying. That's profound.
It really is. What does that signal to you when an actor at that level uses a term like soul for what's frankly a required part of the job?
It signals a fundamental mismatch, a deep conflict between the creative impulse and the commercial necessity. It suggests the process of turning the art into a commodity, of pitching it over and over. It somehow violates the integrity of the art for her.
She feels like she gets to do so little of the bit that I act.
So, okay, what is the bit she enjoyed? She was specific about that.
Yeah, she talked about the preparation, the collaboration, like talking through a scene with the director or other actors.
And that specific moment when the camera starts rolling.
Right. And how she described that moment, she called acting in those moments an intense form of
meditation. Think about it. It's about achieving total presence, forgetting everything else, the worries, the future, the public scrutiny.
Being so immersed, she said, that you cannot just be anywhere else. And she finds that feeling so freeing.
So the very state she seems to be seeking in her life now, that caring and being present, she actually finds it in the act of creation, the act.
But the irony is, the system built around that creative act then forces her into the exact opposite state.
Right. The promotional tour, the junkets, the same questions again and again, having to drum up enthusiasm for something maybe filmed a year ago.
It yanks her out of that meditative presence and forces her back into projecting, planning, performing enthusiasm, back into the anxiety of output.
The pure presence of creation versus the pure projection of promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And she finds that projection part corrosive, soul-destroying.
It also seems like she maybe forgot just how intense performing itself can be, even without the massive fame attached.
You mean the small play she mentioned?
Yeah, something she did just with friends, no public audience, but she said even that was stressful.
That's actually a really telling detail. It suggests the pressure isn't only about fame or money or reviews. There's an inherent vulnerability in performance, in putting your work out there, even for friends.
So the fame machine just cranks that baseline stress up to 11, maybe? To that soul-destroying level.
Seems likely. It layers on the financial stake, the global scrutiny, the constant demand for the next thing.
Which all circles back to that core struggle. Trying to live authentically when your existence, your success, feels like it needs constant justification through more output. Maybe the 5 years really were about trying to fundamentally reset that itself.
Okay, but now we absolutely have to bring in the other side of the industry perspective, because complaining that promotion is soul-destroying.
Yeah, it hits different when you're potentially earning millions for that work, right? And when huge amounts of other people's money are riding on the film's success.
Exactly. This is where the stakeholder argument comes. The sources make a really crucial point about financial stake.
That a lot of big movie stars, especially in franchises, get massive paychecks up front, but might not have much or any back-end profit participation.
Right. Or the film has to make such an astronomical amount before those profit points kick in that it rarely happens. So their personal financial incentive beyond the initial fee might be limited.
Whereas the studio, the producers, the investors, they've sunk maybe hundreds of millions in production and marketing.
Easily. Think $200 million to make it, another $100 million plus to sell it worldwide. That promotional tour isn't just fluff. It's a core part of recouping that massive investment. It's about ROI.
So from their perspective, the star complaining about promotion, it's like complaining about a fundamental part of the deal they signed up for.
And the argument goes, if you're truly passionate about the art, about the film itself, shouldn't sharing it be, well, not soul-destroying? Shouldn't your genuine enthusiasm make the selling part feel natural, even easy?
That the passion for the process should extend to wanting the product to connect with an audience.
Exactly. If you love the thing you made, you should want to tell people about it. The fact that she finds it so painful suggests maybe a disconnect there.
And if you want the perfect example of someone who doesn't seem to have that,
you have to talk about Tom Cruise. He's the gold standard, isn't he? The actor-producer who absolutely masters the promotional.
And crucially, he does have skin in the game. He produces, he helps fund his movies, he has a direct financial stake.
Even if the last couple of Mission Impossible films apparently didn't make back their huge cost, his investment in the experience.
And it shows in how he handles promotion. That anecdote from the interviewer, Chris Van Vliet, it's amazing.
Yeah, describing how Cruise looks at the interviewer like the world melted away.
Right.
Complete intense focus just on that one person.
It's like Cruise takes that same intense meditation that Watson finds in acting, and he applies it to the selling. He performs presence during...
He's basically hawking his product, Source puts it, but he does it by conveying pure passion for the cinematic experience he wants the audience to have. He connects his art to the audience through sheer force of will and focus.
So the implication is, if promotion feels soul-destroying, maybe it's because you don't feel that same ownership or connection to the project's journey out into the world.
Or maybe you just fundamentally reject the commodification aspect, no matter how passionate. It's complex.
Definitely. Now, let's bring in another voice, Dave Bautista, because his perspective offers a really stark contrast in terms of work ethic.
Oh yeah, Bautista's comments are great. He comes from pro wrestling, a physically punishing world, gets into Marvel. He has zero patience for actors complaining about making movies.
He has this threshold, right? He says he won't work with people he calls a-holes who just bitch and moan on set.
His quote is pretty blunt. I don't want to hear people bitching, complaining, moaning, and groaning about making movies. He sees it as a privilege.
A love thing, he calls. Something they're fortunate enough to be doing.
That's a completely different energy, isn't it? It's gratitude, It's almost a blue-collar ethic applied to Hollywood. Like, this is great work, stop whining.
It makes Watson's existential angst about promotion sound, well, maybe a bit out of touch from that perspective. Ungrateful.
Potentially. And this connects to a broader critique the sources raise, specifically about former child stars.
The idea that maybe never having faced real adversity or having a real-world job outside the bubble, it can lead somewhere strange.
Exactly. The sources suggest it can create a kind of identity crisis later on. You've got the money, the fame, achieved incredibly young. So what drives you? What's your purpose outside the machine that built you?
And if that machine is the only reality you've known, you might feel lost, stir crazy, as the Force put.
Which then drives them towards these pursuits that, for anyone else, would be normal life stages or admirable goals.
Like going back to school, getting degrees, doing humanitarian work, like speaking at the UN.
Or even defining your relationship status, like self-part.
But the critical lens here suggests that for someone who's been a global brand since childhood, like Watson being the face of Burberry back in 2009, these things might be less about organic growth and more about a desperate search for an identity not tied to commerce.
Trying to build an authentic self, ritual act, because their initial self was constructed as a product.
That seems to be the argument. Searching for meaning outside the only container they've ever owned.
And there's one more distinction that sources make that's important here regarding work patterns in Hollywood.
The difference between big movie stars and regular TV actors.
Yeah, it's not just pay, it's the rhythm of the work. Movie stars like Watson, or even Bautista now with Marvel money, might work intensely on one huge project a year, maybe even less.
Which allows for these long breaks, these periods of reflection or, 5-year hiatus.
Contrast that with workhorse TV act. The source used Victor Garber as an example, as someone who seems to work constantly.
18-hour days, 9 months a year, churning out episodes, year after year.
That kind of relentless schedule, the sources argue, makes them feel closer to what would be considered blue-collar within the industry structure.
Closer to the average everyday person's plight because it's a consistent, demanding grind. Even if the pay is good, they don't really have the option of taking half a decade off to find.
Right. So from that perspective, the deep philosophical struggles of an A-lister who works occasionally might seem a lot disconnected from the people who keep the lights on day in, day out.
So wrapping this all up, this deep dive really highlights core tension for someone like Emma Watson.
Yeah, it's the joy and presence she finds in the pure act of creation, that meditative state of act.
Clashing head-on with what she sees as the soul-destroying demands of producing, promoting, and commodifying that creation within the Hollywood.
She wants the being, the industry demands the producing.
Yeah.
And the hiatus was her radical attempt to prioritize the former.
And looking back at her re-entry, especially those comments on J.K. Rowling, we do have to acknowledge something.
The maturity aspect.
I think so. The source gives her credit for not just throwing Rowling under the bus entirely, which would have been the easier path.
She chose nuance. She chose to acknowledge a complex history and affection, even knowing it would bring criticism from corners demanding absolute ideological purity.
It showed a willingness to stand by her own values, even when unpopular. A kind of integrity, maybe aligning with her desire for authenticity over performance.
A choice for complexity in a world often pushing for simplistic answers, much like her trying to redefine productivity, choosing presence over mere output.
Okay, so that leaves us with a final thought, a question for you, the listener, to chew on.
If art, at its heart, is about connecting the artist's vision or feeling to an audience,
then can an artist ever truly achieve that state of just being, of loving the process, if they completely reject the system, however flawed, however soul-destroying, that actually builds the bridge between their work and the people it's meant?
Is that promotional grind, maybe? The necessary, difficult labor required to give the art life beyond the artist? Something to think about.